Hi, it is natural to say that the knowledge you need to master to succeed in the next few years is very different from what you have learned in the past. The primary reason for that is the pandemic, which has fundamentally shaken business models, but it's also about the natural course of the Indian economy. In this video, we're going to look at what are the 5 courses that you need to master today so that you can succeed in your chosen line of work, whether you want to be a corporate professional, an entrepreneur, an influencer, or anything along similar lines. My name is Sandeep. I am an MBA from IIM Bangalore and I have a strategy course from INSEAD. I have nearly 12 years of experience having held leadership positions in FMCG and consulting. I'm also the author of 3 successful books, with my 3rd book, Hacks for Life and Career, a millennial's guide to making it big, being a bestseller on Amazon. Let's start with the first part of the video in terms of which are the 5 courses I think are absolutely essential for you to master to succeed in the next few years. The number one is something that you wouldn't have heard a lot, which is behavioral psychology. Why do I say that? Because a large part of your work, you will be dealing with vendors, you'll be dealing with customers, consumers, and your bosses. They're all human beings. And it's very, very important to understand how human beings work. How do they think? What are their biases? What are the nudges you need? So you have to understand and practice behavioral psychology to actually succeed in your career. The second course that you need is not something which is new, which is something that's been there for the last 30 years in terms of importance, which is knowledge of financial statements, the profit and loss, balance sheet, and the cash flow statements. Now, why is this important? It is important because irrespective of whether you're an entrepreneur, an influencer, corporate professional, or even a professor, you need to understand how your place of work is doing numerically, and you need to master financial statements for that. I've seen many leaders who don't understand financial statements very well and sometimes struggle in their careers a bit. The misconception is that the P&L is actually the most important among the 3. It is not. It is actually the cash flow statement which is the most important among the 3, because after all, cash is king. The third course that you need to master and master very quickly is knowledge of economics, both macroeconomics and microeconomics. Why is it becoming so important? If you see the world that we are living in, the macro forces are more and more defining your business, whether it's political forces, social forces, cultural forces, interventions by the central banks. And it's very, very important that you master how movement on macro forces will impact your line of work. The second thing that is very important is to look at microeconomics, principles of supply, demand, principles of pricing, principles of elasticity, so that you can understand how consumer behavior will work when you have different forces that are operating in. With business models changing, with more and more platforms coming in, different set of competitors coming in, different set of collaborative systems coming in, economic systems and their understanding becomes extremely important. The fourth course that is important is knowledge of sales and distribution. Why do I say that? If you look at the Indian GDP, 60% of our GDP comes from domestic consumption, which means what people like you and I consume. Now, if you look forward in the next few years, the Indian economy will be driven by domestic consumption, urban growth, rural growth, the premium story. And if you have to really crack into this growth story, you have to understand sales and distribution, which means what's the optimal channel network, how far do you increase, what are the trade schemes you need, how do you manage the manpower, what is the role of technology as you set up these sales and distribution systems. The fifth course that you absolutely need is supply chain understanding. This is becoming increasingly important given the geographical and the political forces that are at play. A lot of countries, a lot of companies are trying to remove the supply chains and become less dependent on either China or one vendor and bring it home. And in this context, which is likely to be there for the next 3 to 5 years, You have to understand how global supply chains work. How do you deal with risk? How do you minimize cost? How do you handle political and social forces? And knowledge of supply chain management is going to be extremely important. So these are my take in terms of the top 5 courses that you need to succeed over the next few years. Why don't you drop in your suggestions in terms of what courses you think are absolutely important given the state of the economy over the next few years? We've identified what are the courses that are most important. How do you acquire knowledge of these courses, say over the next 2 to 3 quarters? The first is, if you are in business school, it becomes very easy for you. You can either take electives which are focused on these courses. Some of these courses might be a part of your main curriculum, or you can choose projects which are attuned to these courses. In case you're not in business school, there are other avenues you can use to build expertise on these courses. The second way you can look at is through knowledge of books. There are a lot of books that explain these courses extremely well. Here are my 3 recommendations. The first one is Misbehaving by Richard Thaler. He's a Nobel Prize winner. He talks about behavioral sciences and behavioral psychology, the power of nudges to drive policy and consumer behavior. The second book I recommend is a very interesting one. It is Steve Jobs' biography by Walter Isaacson. The reason I recommend his biography is because you will see a lot of information in these courses come alive as Steve Jobs built his pioneering company, Apple. The third book I recommend is my own book, Hacks for Life and Career, A Millennial's Guide to Making It Big, because it is customized to address these courses. It explains some of the key concepts in these courses in a very easy format with real world examples. A lot of the information on this video you're actually hearing on is from my book. The next way you can pick up expertise on these courses is also to look at AltUni. It's the alternate university run by InsideIIM. They have many courses on supply chain, on marketing, and you can enroll for some of this to build your knowledge in these courses. The link to that AltUni network is in the description below. The final way you can look at increasing your knowledge in these courses to actually look at specific TV shows and podcasts. I'm a big fan of Shark Tank, and Shark Tank's now starting in India. It's a great way for you to see how VCs or PEs think, and the questions they ask you are exactly derived from the 5 courses that I mentioned. Shark Tank is also starting in India. I would recommend you give it a watch. In terms of podcasts, I recommend you watch The Economist Intelligence Unit. The way they talk about daily business is derived from these 5 courses. It's a free podcast. You need to download the podcast app on your phone and look for The Economist Intelligence Unit. It's a little heavy, but I think it's worth it as you go through over your career. In conclusion, if you want to succeed over the next few years in your career, you should look to master at least these 5 courses and learn them repeatedly so that you turn out to be very competent at your place of work. If you have any questions or if you have any thoughts, you can drop them in the comments box below, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and you can send in your questions on LinkedIn to me. I will try and respond to as many of them as I can. In case you like this video, you can also see the other videos I have created for this channel. And till next time, take care.